I can remember it like it was yesterday when I first came across Joshscorcher. He made a number of reviews of the show on his channel alongside his video game material, and I figured I'd give him a watch. At first he seemed like the typical guy who wasn't all that into the show. He didn't hate it, but it just didn't really interest him. Hell, he even admitted that he didn't consider himself as a brony at one point. But sure enough, as time went on, his curiosity got the better of him and his participation in the fandom began to grow on him. It wasn't until his review of Twilight's Kingdom that I was fully assured that his love for the show was undeniable. He's still mainly known for his video game material, but nonetheless he takes time to review a random episode from the show. Aside from that, he made a separate account where he started doing a review of almost every episode of Season 4. From Bats to the Equestria games, as well as a few side commentaries like his analysis on Rainbow Dash's character and his thoughts on Chrysalis's invasion. It's safe to say that Season 4 was the season where Joshscorcher truly started to take his participation in the fandom seriously. An interesting thing about Joshscorcher is that he seems to take some inspiration from Doug Walker's Nostalgia Critic, in which he goes scene by scene making jokes out of things that he either really loves or things that don't seem to make sense to him. However, it doesn't feel like a ripoff. He manages to capture the spirit of the Nostalgia Critic style relatively well, while still making it his own thing. He makes good jokes and he manages to get an interesting outlook on the episode across. On the other hand, you got his taking insert name of the episode here too seriously, in which he seems to review an episode with the same mindset. But unlike his reviews on his official channel, the Taking Too Seriously series is much more straightforward. Instead of the Nostalgia Critic style humor, he simply talks about the episode with his OC on screen. He actually has a surprisingly optimistic outlook on the episodes he reviews most of the time, which is actually provided by how he doesn't have expectations. Hell, he doesn't have expectations so much that he actually keeps himself away from spoilers. I actually think that it's a key element that helps him to appreciate the show so much. He also carries his sense of humor into these more straightforward reviews, which helps to make them more entertaining. But what I truly find amazing about Joshscorcher is that he doesn't let the lack of the episode's logic get in the way of his enjoyment of it. For example, in his review of It Ain't Easy Being Breezy's, he nitpicks the hell out of it and points out its notable flaws. But by the end of the review, he finds himself still relatively liking it. For whatever flaws the episode had, he acknowledges that it has a good moral and some good characterization. There's all sorts of episodes that he nitpicks, but he does it in a way that isn't too cynical. It's all in good fun, and by the end he may still admit to finding something in the episode to give credit where it's due. This is an example of a good nitpicker. You can point out every single flaw in something and still enjoy it, or at least acknowledge its strengths, which is more than I can say for some other nitpickers.
But that's your obnoxious. Spike, shut up, you didn't do anything.
Yeah, we'll be talking about her later. His nitpicks and criticisms might stack up, but for the most part they make sense. Each episode has its flaws, and he has an interesting way of tackling each one, which helps to make his reviews more relatable. Another thing worth noting about him is that he's actually a part of the Navy. That's right, Joshscorcher is a military brony. He actually uses this to his advantage in his reviews of Testing 123 and even the Equestria games. I might be putting too much hopeful thinking into this, but I think that Joshscorcher is one of the most optimistic fans of the show I've ever seen. He doesn't harp too much on what he doesn't like, and he even isn't that bothered by what others are bothered by. Hell, he even goes so far as to say that Pinkie Pie and Philly Vanilli wasn't a big deal. My god, what a relief that was. One of my favorite videos of his is actually his personal favorite episodes list, where he talks about Sisterhood Social and Pinkie Apple Pie as perfect mirrors on how families work. His monologues and speeches on his connection with his family are just beautiful to listen to. He actually has a lot of personal connections to the series, and having all of these personal connections actually makes him a very pleasant member of the Analysis League. The more you relate to something, the easier it is to talk about in length that will keep your audience interested. You could say that it's a very wide coincidence that he has this many personal connections with this many episodes from the show, but as long as he talks about the episode in an interesting way, I don't really feel bothered by it. He's also done some fun crossovers and has some meetings with Dr. Wolf about fan art and anger management. If anything, Joshscorcher has all the strengths that the mysterious Mr. Enter has, in that you just want to listen to him talk. You want to know what he thought of an episode, and you want to hear him explain how he connects with it. There are things that Joshscorcher has that the mysterious Mr. Enter doesn't, and in a few ways, I think that technically does make him a better analyst than the mysterious Mr. Enter, if only slightly. Even Mr. Enter seems to admit it in his response to Biter. I know I tend to talk a lot on how divisive the fandom is these days, but Joshscorcher helps to remind me what makes analysis on MLP so much fun. He has an undying love for it, and he has very interesting ways of looking at the show from his own angle. If you ever have the time, check him out and be entertained. You won't be disappointed.
Love's an open door. Love's an open door. Love's an open door with you. With you. With you. With you. Love's an open door.